Hello, everybody. My name's Brian Moss, and we have had this tumultuous situation where we haven't been able to catch up or link up. So, thankful for technology that we can do it this way at least. So, I'll see everybody at the in the gallery at Wexner Center. I think tomorrow or the day after. So, I'm excited for that to meet everybody. So, we'll see what happens. But let's go ahead and knock this out real quick. So, no Purifoy, junk data. So, when you think about Dada, I don't know if anyone knows what Dada is. It was an art movement from basically the 20s. And let's see here. And this is probably the most critical point in the movement, the defining moment. So these are called ready-mades. As you know, it's a toilet, right? But what Duchamp did was put this toilet inside the gallery, and he wrote his signature on it, R. Mutt, 1917, and that was the defining moment because it was appalling. People were confused. They said, "This is art." So the idea of taking something that's already exists in culture and society and everyday use and turning it into art. And that's what Purifoy does. He just pushes it to its limits. And we'll see that. So let's take a look. We'll go through this PowerPoint rather quickly so that I don't bore you all to death. So Purifoy was born August 17th, 1917 in Snow Hill, Alabama. So he was born in the South about 40 years into the Jim Crow era. Now, you all should know what Jim Crow was, but if you don't for some reason, the Jim Crow laws came out of Reconstruction, which was to basically create a smooth transition. It's where the government occupied places in the South during Reconstruction to make sure that the laws of equality were there for blacks coming out of slavery. This lasted for, I think, about a decade roughly. And then through systematic racism and through the cunning ways and the power of the South and the slave owners of the time, they started developing these laws of Jim Crow, which segregated blacks from the rest of society. They aren't written that way, but as you know, it's all double speak. And obviously, it was more direct and overt as you saw black suffering. And what that means by black suffering is obviously water fountains, their own schools, which were not of the same quality as the white schools, housing, right? Not the same equality as whites would receive. So you can see how this was a problem. Anyway, so Purifoy is born into this. And just look at his tenacity and strength throughout the course of these next couple of decades, right? So he went to Alabama State University, graduated in 39 with his undergrad, volunteered in the Navy till 45, and then he received his master's degree in social work in Atlanta at Atlanta University in 48. Here's the little feather in the cap, everyone. He moved to Cleveland, Ohio to work as a social worker from 48 to 50. I think that's kind of awesome. Anyone in the class from Cleveland? So then we have, he went to Cal Arts up to 56, and this was his first endeavor into art. So you'll see this parallel between his social work and his art working in tandem, sometimes isolated, sometimes as a statement, and that's what we're going to explore. So the cool thing about when he attended Cal Arts, and this is coming out of the Jim Crow laws, right? As you can see, he was the first full-time African-American student. So that's really cool. You know what I mean? That's like landmark. That's a milestone. So you can see how he realized pretty soon that he was paving a road for the rest of us, black artists or even minority artists. Like the idea of like a minority isn't exclusive to blacks, right? That includes women's, women, even poor. So it's a class situation, right? So it's very relatable. So even if you can relate to the struggle on some level, meaning like you have a cousin that maybe had a different lifestyle or, you know, maybe served time, these are all identifiers that he was connecting with to like represent the form of oppression or um, outcasted from society. So he was representing this in his art. Um, he would go on to be the founding director of Watts Tower Art Center. That was from 64 to 66. So you can see there how he was incorporating his social work. And for everyone who isn't aware of the Watts Towers, Watts Towers looks like this. I think it was made out of metal. You can see it's like 2 to 3 obelisk kind of towers. And they have this what they look like when you sit inside. So anyway, he was he created programming and worked with the inner city, and he worked with sort of like a reconstruction program in Watts where he developed. I don't know if where he. What am I trying to say? Where he people who aren't going to school, he got them back on track, right? And he educated the public through art and the community through art. So you could probably see how many people he influenced coming out of here. Even if he didn't influence them directly, he may have influenced them indirectly. So during this time, 65 was the Watts Rebellion. The news was calling this a riot. And as you know, just from seeing things like Katrina, you can see that that's news jargon for to hide to its coding. They use it to tell you that these aren't ideal representatives of what the standard of culture is. But once again, you're oppressing a group of people, right? So the Watts Rebellion reflects this. So the catalyst for this was a routine traffic stop, and an argument broke out between a cop and the driver. And I think it ended up becoming a fight. But anyway, so what this did, but this symbolizes something. This symbolizes oppression through this long tail of Jim Crow, right? And even though it wasn't maybe as overt and direct in California as it would have been in Alabama, doesn't exempt it because people travel, word gets around, there's a network, right? So the idea in Watts, well, the unfortunate thing about Watts was that it was segregated. There was no jobs, poor housing conditions. Once again, right, the same things I was telling you that was coming out of Jim Crow. So they were fed up. No different from Baltimore, right? Or the Black Lives Movement situation. Same thing, right? So what came out of this was that Purifoy, would him and a few other artists picked up a lot of the trash, the and specifically the signs, and they created art out of it. So as you can, what we're looking at now, so 66 signs in neon, and this is the catalog from the exhibition, which is kind of awesome, right? Because the internet. So what you'll see in the exhibition at the museum is remnants of this, photos of it, and this right here, Sir Watts, he made another one because this one sold, and he made another one, I think, on commission. And so the second one is in the show. But as you can see, a lot of these pieces are just beautiful abstractions. So think about like how people would communicate during now. So let's say something happened. The way that the message would disseminate would be through Facebook, Twitter, the news, YouTube videos, text messages, these kind of things. Well, in 66, you only had the news, radio, and television. So, and then, newspaper. So this vehicle he created, like that piece is beautiful, by the way. The art show created that dialogue and that narrative about the plight the situation and the plight of the culture. So it was an examination. So Purifoy, through collecting junk, created this idea of like the ready-made, right? He took that idea, but turned it into a statement. Okay, so and this is examples of it. Like come on, that's just amazing. Like this piece is so stunning. So, and once again, there, look, isn't that great? Going back to Duchamp's our mutt, the ready-made toilet, he put a sink as representing in the gallery space, right? Beautiful piece. So this is an idea of the show. Okay, so let's jump a little bit because we only have 5 minutes left. So another important part is that Purifoy was a policymaker for the state of California, and that was from 76 to 87. Okay, for the arts and education. This was represented similar to like the program you're involved in with the Wexner Start the Pages program. It's similar to that, but just of 76 through 87. So creating the arts in schools, communities, these kind of things, showing the importance of that. And then Purified after retirement, essentially, 87 to 04, he moved out to California. Well, sorry, a little tired. He moved out to Joshua Tree, California, from LA. Think the 80s yuppies, it was getting really expensive. So that's why he moved. So we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to go ahead and get into this art. But, oh yeah, real quick. So he created this museum out in the desert, in the Mojave Desert. So think about working think about if you have a relative in their 60s or 70s. Do they like collect junk and haul it out to the desert and build sculptures, weld, build like little houses, little rooms, facades? Well, this is what he was doing out here because like he didn't have representation in LA or any galleries. So he's like, oh, well, they won't let me in the museum. I'll make my own museum. So this is like akin to what you would see today as like street art, right? So just look at this first piece. This is a great introduction to his work. These are tires and it says welcome, right? And there's this path. But think about it, there's no wall surrounding the museum, right? So by going through that door, but you've gone through so many doors to enter a place. So this promotes the imagination immediately. It takes you into another world, even though it's not constructed by walls. It's giving you that classic tradition that you're used to and the sense of things tangible, but just placing them in different locations. And that's what the no walls represents. Okay? So look at this toilet stacking, once again, going back to Duchamp with his ready-made toilets in the gallery. You can see on here that it's suspended by these cables, right? But if you're looking at it from a distance, you wouldn't know that it's a sound structure. You would just see this like toilet sculpture thing, and it would look like it's sustaining itself. So he plays a lot with like the idea of weight, right? Same here with these bikes on like the seesaw or teeter-totter. Like it has this perception of movement, weight. And look at this. This represents a train, right? Even though it's just made out of old junk. You can see them. These are vacuums back here. These are they're all the same, right? But in it shows repetition, so it represents motion, even though it's not moving. So sorry, I'm cutting this video a little short, but it only has like a 15-minute recording cycle. But the idea of the show gives you an idea of how he creates art with junk and makes it beautiful. So these are some of the pieces you'll see in the exhibition as I scroll through. And this one, for example, is a statement. It represents tar and feather. It's called Strange Fruit, which was a poem written by a Jewish man named Abel. I don't remember his last name. So yeah, some of his pieces are statements.